My guests today are Stacy Hammerland and Jessica Rothbart, co-founders of Micah Studios, a low-cost microschool learning center for children ages 6 to 18 in Newport, New Hampshire, which is in the Upper Valley region of the state. Micah Studios focuses specifically on low-income students who are now eligible for various expanded school choice programs throughout New Hampshire, including the Education Freedom Account ESA program for low-income students. Jessica is a homeschooling mother of 6 children, and Stacy is a mother of 4 adult children and a grandmother to 2 children, both with a passion for education and expanding education options for more families. Stacy and Jessica, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
We're glad to be here. Thank you.
It's so great to have you here, particularly because you have just launched Micah Studios this fall. You will be actually tomorrow welcoming your first batch of new students to the program. And you already have 11 students signed up for this brand new learning center. I think that gives so much hope and encouragement to any aspiring education entrepreneurs who may be listening or watching that this is something that you can do and that there's lots of demand for it there. And of course, you're in a choice-friendly state that makes these alternative education programs more financially accessible to more families. So we're going to talk about all of that. But I'd love to start by hearing, when did you get this idea to create a microschool? And, kind of what were the steps you've been taking to get to this launch point?
So I'd say the beginning part of this was that most of my children don't fit into the per se school models that there normally are available for us being a large family. And so I have tried to figure out ways to make it work, homeschooling, and it wasn't really working, just having my kids and trying to be involved in the homeschooling community as much as we could with so many kids. So by reaching out and being part of the community, we've been able to figure out that this was more of a need than we thought.
We've been talking about it for a long time. And then I think about a year ago, we kind of came up with a model that we thought was viable. And honestly, a lot of it's from listening to your podcast and listening to other people doing this and okay, well, we can do this. People are doing this. This is amazing. It's been really inspiring to listen to all your guests. And I think that kind of pushed us over the edge and we're like, we can do this.
Yeah.
So that just makes my day, right?
It is so true. It's amazing.
So good to hear. Yeah. To hear from others that are doing this, and you're like, well, wait a minute, we can do the same thing. And how influential was sort of these expanded school choice programs in New Hampshire for that? So New Hampshire has long had a tax credit scholarship program for low-income families. It was the only tax credit scholarship program in the country that included homeschoolers. Now there's the expanded Education Freedom Account ESA program, Education Savings Account program, that reaches even more low-income families throughout the state and hopefully will continue to get expanded. How much of an influence did those programs have in sort of formulating your vision too?
I would say that they were very top priority, knowing that that was an option, that this wasn't going to be a financial burden on families. And they knew that they had a choice. Now that they know that they have the choice and they don't need to send their kid to the public school, because whether they work a 40-hour job or they are a part-time person, they didn't know that they had the option to not have to pull it out of their own bank account to pay for their kid to go to a different option.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this without the education freedom accounts and the scholarship funds. And like you said, we're specifically targeting families that wouldn't have an alternative option without this funding.
Yeah.
So you say you wouldn't have been able to do this. There are obviously microschools and learning centers across the country, including in states like mine in Massachusetts, where we don't have choice programs. So maybe you could talk a little bit more, Stacy, about what you mean by that. Like what was it about the EFA and the scholarship programs that made this possible?
Well, these are families that wouldn't have money for any other option that's out there. They don't have money for private school, or even if they could possibly scrape together the money from private school, there's transportation issues, there's work issues. There's things like that. We live in an area where 46% of the families are economically disadvantaged. And they have enough financial burden that it's not a viable option.
So this is just so exciting. And you did go into this with thinking that you wanted to focus on a community of low income families, that you wanted to really get at the price point of the EFAs and the scholarship programs to make it accessible, certainly not excluding higher income families, but really targeting that community that's so often excluded from schooling alternatives, from alternatives to a conventional assigned district school. So tell us a little bit about how your tuition is structured and how the week is structured, because you're set up as a learning center for homeschoolers. So your students are technically registered homeschoolers in the state, but they can attend part-time or full-time. So what does that pricing look like for that?
Let us tell you. We basically broke down operating with the lower numbers to Education Freedom Account, like if they only qualify for the minimum numbers. We basically figured that as a tuition for the year and broke it down into the 9 months that will be open.
And with that, it will help us purchase the curriculum that will be individualized per each student, or learner is the word that we're using, because we're not a school, so we don't want to categorize them as students. And so whether that be that one of the learners wants to focus on animal science, we will make sure that that student's curriculum, which the tuition will help pay for the curriculum, and another student may want to switch over and be a airplane pilot. So we will work with the local resources, and most of the local places are willing to work with us, which is amazing. And their curriculum will be based around their interest. So most of our day will end up being a little bit of some core time, but at their pace and their level. So we're not going to say, oh, well, you're 10 years old, you need to be doing 5th grade math. We're going to say, okay, you've placed like this in the assessment test that we've worked with you on, then we're going to work on that, no matter how old they are.
Yeah, meet them where they are.
Yeah. And then, of course, we'll do a amazing lunchtime, recess per se time, but getting them out of the 4 walls of a classroom is our main priority. And the afternoon of our day is planned on project-based, like we said, with the kid that's doing animal science may go and visit a dog shelter. They may go and work out in the wilderness doing who knows what. So we're not sitting at a table all day learning.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's amazing about your program is, again, you're offering this flexible scheduling, which is why so many of these microschools decide to be structured as homeschool learning centers, so that families do have that customization option, that they're not tied to compulsory attendance laws and seat time requirements that often private schools are required to comply with. And so they can make the decision that's right for their children, but they could come 5 days a week for full school day program for roughly $5,000 a year in tuition, which is significantly lower cost than traditional private schools. So already more financially accessible to more families. And this is the case sort of across the country with microschools like yours. Then you add in the school choice programs and the education savings account scholarship programs. And almost any family really could attend, and that's really your goal, your desire.
Exactly.
So, tell us a little bit more about this community involvement, because I know that that's a big piece of your mission. You do have a brick and mortar location, so even though you'll be away from it for significant parts of the day and week, it is an actual location that you found. But tell us about what you're envisioning for more of this community involvement.
Well, our home base, we're partnering with a local church using their space. But then there's an amazing library that has programs all the time. There's a library art center that offers lessons for children. 4-H is very active in this community, so we're going to be using some of their curriculum. And also this population, a lot of the parents, most of the parents are going to be working till 5. So even when the quote unquote learning day ends, we're partnering with 4-H to provide an after-school program on one day, and we're partnering with the Episcopal Church to offer a music, dance, drumming after-school thing. And then we're filling in the other gaps because the kids need some place to be until mom or dad gets out of work. But that's where we may be facilitating it, but the community is doing the work. We're partnering with other people. This isn't all us. So we're very excited about that. And we're working on a 4-H middle school program group as well for after school.
I love that. So meeting the needs of the families who need full day, including after school care, but also really creating a collaborative community experience. And so partnering with local organizations. And I imagine as you're just getting up and running, more organizations in your community will hear about you, want to partner with you. And so it's just exciting to see where that goes. And of course, that leads to more families hearing about you. It can increase your enrollment there. But already out of the gate, you have 11 students, sort of mixed age, within that sort of 6-year-old to 18-year-old range that you're serving. Tell us a little bit about those learners that will be coming to your program. Were they already in a district school and are coming out? Have they been homeschoolers? What are some of their demographics? Let us know.
We actually hit all 3 of those demographics. We have a family of homeschoolers that's coming. And then we have Jessica's family where they've kind of tried different hybrids. Some of the kids have gone to school and then realized it didn't work and they're homeschooling. She has a son who is attending the public school for a half day. And then we have a new family that has been in public school and this will be their first year homeschooling. So we've covered all the bases.
Yeah. And what are you hearing, whether it's from that family that's been in a district school or others that you may be getting inquiries from? What are they attracted to about this microschool model that might be different from the conventional school system?
These are kids. I mean, Jess and I were talking about this. We were both kids who kind of struggled in a traditional school setting, and we both had kids who struggled in a traditional school setting. And I think that's the issue with the family that's going to be leaving the public school and coming to us is they did okay, but they weren't thriving. And she knows that the kids are capable of so much more.
Yeah, she sees the potential in her children, and it seems like she feels like others don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you were really drawn to a personalized curriculum like so many microschool founders. I know you had told me you were inspired by the Acton Academy model of self-driven learning. You decided to, sort of be an independent school rather than affiliate with Acton, but we're certainly gravitating toward that learner-driven education model and self-directed education. How did kind of your educational philosophy take shape, deciding kind of what you wanted to build here?
We looked at a lot of other programs. We looked at Acton Academy, we looked at the Sudbury model, and we've looked at different learning centers, and kind of they all seem to have the same curriculum where there's some core learning in the morning and then a break and then project driven afternoon. We're looking at doing an entrepreneurship. What is
the business fair?
A business fair, kind of like the Acton model, to inspire the kids to see what they want to work on. And we're really kind of hoping that the kids have a lot of input and help us design the gaps that we still have. We know what we want the day to look like, but we want to make sure this is what they want it to look like.
And of course, my children are kind of more involved sometimes because we'll have meetings at my house or whatever. And so they'll hear and they're like, oh yeah, let's make sure we do this. So the learners are the ones that are going to be driving our full, I'd say, educational experience.
Absolutely.
So
we just want to be like, kids love learning. People love learning. So we just want that. We want students to be excited and to learn what they want to learn about, because whatever you're studying, you're going to learn math, science in it. It's all incorporated. And actually, we had a really interesting meeting with the Department of Education yesterday about their Learn Anywhere program. So we were kind of incorporating that. We have had some older high school age students who would come and work with the younger kids. So we're exploring the possibility of them getting actual school credit for coming and being, student teachers or assistants or helpers. So we're really, whatever we can find, we're treasure hunting to make this work.
Yeah, and New Hampshire really is on the forefront of not only school choice policies and has been for a long time, but in thinking about teaching and learning differently. The Learn Everywhere program, sort of the first in the nation program to allow community organizations to be recognized as providing high school credit to students who wanted to receive a high school diploma. Now, of course, this flurry of education entrepreneurship that is just expanding and accelerating, obviously since the COVID pandemic and school shutdowns, but now with the expanded ESA program that leads to more accessibility to these programs and more people like you who want to create those programs to meet that demand from families. And I think that that's what's so exciting to see there. And in fact, later this month, I was, talking with you about this, that the Josiah Bartlett Center in New Hampshire is hosting a free conference, kind of a mini conference on Saturday, September 30th. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes, that is really about encouraging education, entrepreneurship, and innovation, and open to current and prospective education founders, entrepreneurial founders, and anyone else who's interested in this space and alternative education models. So I hear a lot from individuals who want to open a learning center like yours, and they have the idea and they have their educational philosophy, sort of formulated. But it's that step, taking that step from idea stage to actual launch, that seems often overwhelming or intimidating. And I wonder if you can talk about what were some of the challenges with that when you went from let's do this to, okay, we're opening tomorrow with 11 students. What has been that journey like for you, and some of the challenges there?
It's been absolutely terrifying.
It has. There's been many nights where we've both woken up like in panic. Oh my goodness, this is not going to work. But we work through it. And yeah.
I would tell anybody who is interested to just go for it. Like, the information is out there, the pieces are out there. It's a matter of taking the time and looking. And we've sat down, and I think we've recreated this model a couple times over till we figured out that, like, yes, this is what we want, makes sense for these kids. And we have had the support of Jess's kids, who have been very, very vocal as to what is a good idea and what is a bad idea. So that has been really helpful. And we're looking forward to the other students giving us more input. And we've been lucky to find people who are good at different things. Like, we don't know everything. We've definitely picked up some new skill sets. Yeah. We've also been smart enough to reach out to somebody and say, we don't know how to grant write, or we don't know how to do this. So ask. And yeah, everybody we've asked has been so receptive to supporting this project.
Definitely.
So it's been emotionally terrifying. I think that's important to note. And I appreciate you being honest, because entrepreneurship is scary, right? I mean, it's inherently risky to open a new organization or a small business. And that's why that's why I love talking to entrepreneurs, because you're fearless and you move forward even when it is terrifying, to make the world better, in this case for students and families in New Hampshire. What would you say has been the most difficult thing you've encountered as you've moved from idea stage to launch? What have been some of those, kind of key challenges or obstacles?
Space was a challenge. We all know that rental space, any type of space, is at a premium, probably across the country. So finding space was a challenge. Figuring out how to explain the model to families. Yeah, we'll just talk about that.
Getting the actual information to the families and for them to actually understand what we are doing was a big thing. People would be like, oh, you're part of Micah Studios. Well, what is that? I said, no, it's these kids are going to come to us and they are going to learn, and getting that information to the parents was, or even just the community, not just the parents.
Parents would be like, oh, my daughter needs a 7th grade curriculum. How are you going to do that? And we're like, well, that's not the way we're approaching this. Where is your daughter,
Where's her baseline
academically,
at?
what is her baseline? She might not be ready for a 7th grade curriculum. She might be ready for a 9th grade curriculum. So who knows? So that was, kind of explaining. People be like, what are you doing? So explaining the model to people has been a really big challenge. But when the light goes on and they get, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Then they're really excited.
Yeah, when they realize that teaching and learning can look very different than it looks in a standard classroom, that now there are so many curriculum options and learning resources, many of which are free. I think of Khan Academy, of course, that you're able to customize learning. And like you said, maybe that person's child is in 9th grade level in certain academic areas, and then that learner can work at that level and not be forced to just be in a 7th grade curriculum when that's a mismatch.
Definitely.
I apologize. One more issue was reassuring parents that that learners could go on to a higher level of education. They're like, well, they're not going to get a diploma, so how are they going to apply to college? So I think that was another thing we had to really educate families about, is that there are alternatives, and that many colleges, probably all colleges now, are accepting homeschooled students.
And sometimes actively recruit homeschooled students, right? Because they see that there's a different perspective there, that often there's a joy of learning and curiosity for exploration and discovery that might get lost in the conventional school system. And I think that it's interesting, space obviously being a challenge. You found space within a church. The name of your microschool is Micah Studios, which is a biblical reference, but you're not a faith-based program. You're secular. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about how you came up with your name.
Okay. We're a secular program, but we loved the Micah quote. It's Micah 8.6, and the quote is, "Seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly." We felt like it really encapsulated the values of a good person and a good member and a good citizen. And the Learn Free combines New Hampshire's motto of live free and the value of a free, unstructured, student-led education. So we kind of had fun with the last line. But we think that those are really valuable goals to work towards.
Yeah, and when you said earlier about sort of explaining the model to families, letting them know there's so much more curriculum flexibility in alternative education programs, that homeschoolers can and do go to college and be quite successful. I'm actually surprised, because homeschooling is quite popular and ubiquitous throughout New Hampshire. I think somewhere over 6,000 students are homeschooled in the state of New Hampshire. There's this sort of ethos of parental empowerment and educational freedom in New Hampshire, and yet you're still finding families sort of locked into that schooling status quo. I wonder, if you can speak to that at all. What are your thoughts on that?
A lot of that is in our specific area. In our town of Newport, not many children are actually homeschooled. So a lot of them don't know that it's an option, because it's not what they experienced, and they don't have a lot of understanding in the homeschooling model. If you go more north or more south of us, there's tons of homeschoolers, and I would say I can say for sure. So it definitely is something that they didn't know it was an option.
Mm-hmm.
So
And is that because of the socioeconomics there, Jessica?
Absolutely.
Is it the low income?
I would believe so, because for them it's, well, we send our kids to school so we can go to work kind of thing. Whereas in my family, I've made it so that I've been able to try and stay home as much as I can to homeschool my children that need to be homeschooled, or utilize the school whenever they chose that they wanted to utilize the school, not saying, well, this is where you're going kind of thing.
We've always said, like, we are in awe of these families and this population here, and the parents that work 40, 50 hours at, not great paying jobs, and how successful they are and how hard they work and how wonderful their children are. So if you're working 50 hours a week and there's nobody home, homeschooling is not it's not an option. Maybe they've heard of it roughly, but there's like, how would I ever possibly do that?
Right. And now it's letting them know not only is it possible, but it's financially accessible to you, and it's
Absolutely.
in your community and will provide such a more enriching academic environment, hopefully a more joyful learning environment, because young people are able to kind of pursue their passions and be who they are in your more authentic environment. So what are your kind of hopes and dreams? Let's start with over the first year. What do you hope and expect will happen in this first academic year? And then what are your big dreams, say 5 years from now?
So I'd say our short-term goal and dream is that these kids are going to feel safe and comfortable and just be blown out of the water. I don't know any kid that doesn't want to feel safe and enjoy their learning. So that is my short term, I'd say. I wouldn't even want to say expand, but that's not a possibility, I don't think right now, because 11 students is amazing.
Yeah.
So
But I think you will expand. I mean, don't you think? I mean, if you're
yes.
before you've even launched, you have 11. I mean, what do you think is possible over the next year? I mean, how much space do you have that, how big can you get?
Well, that's one of the things we need to start focusing on, is how many kids can we fit in our space. And we also really, really want to support other people who want to follow this model. Like if anybody wants to reach out to us and kind of, we'll walk them through the steps. We're not going to be able to take as many kids as we ever want to, but we definitely want to support this effort and this movement. And if anybody's interested at all, give us a call and we'll walk them through our very fearful year and how we got to this point. Which has been a really great, inspiring experience. And we're so excited.
Yeah. And so what about after this year? When you think about what's the potential of this program, say 5 years from now, what do you think? Or are you just so focused on day one here that to think ahead just seems, kind of out of reach?
I think we're kind of focused on, getting up and running it and getting started, but we're constantly talking about, okay, well, if we had this space, we could do that, and other people we could bring in as guides, then we would have more, then we'd be able to take more kids. And we've already think, oh, so-and-so, she could come work with us, and then we could take more kids. So the focus, I think, are, in a fantasy world in 5 years, we'd be a huge program, and we would have helped other people set up similar programs, but based specifically on their community. Like this model should work here, but in a different community, they might need something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key part of it is like listening to the people that you want to serve. We need to know what they want.
Yeah. And so it could be that that you have more moments over the coming year and beyond where you're like, oh no, now what do we do? Right. You have so much demand that it might be, sort of equally terrifying to think about expanding. And again, that's all in the package of entrepreneurship, right? Is not only starting, but scaling, meeting increased demand. And I suspect that if, again, out of the gate, you already have 11 students, that you'll have many more. And I'm really looking forward to kind of watching you and looking at your progress over the course of this year and beyond. And so, Jessica and Stacy, what would be the best way for my listeners and viewers to connect with you, to follow your story, as a generous offer from you to provide help and support and resources if others want to do something similar? How can they reach you?
I'd say reach out through our Facebook, and all of our contact information is on our Facebook account, and our website, microschool.org. Sorry, drew a blank for a second there. And they can email us at info@microschool.org, and that will go directly to both of us. So yeah.
Well, I am so excited for your launch. I am thrilled to hear how it goes and hear how this year goes, and just excited to also visit you sooner than later. I'm not too far away, so would love to come up and see Micah Studios in action. So best wishes for a wonderful year ahead. And Stacy Hammerland and Jessica Rothbart, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you for having us. And we look forward to seeing you at the conference on the 30th.
Yes, that'll be great. Another wonderful opportunity for education entrepreneurs and aspiring education entrepreneurs to connect with each other and hear from some incredible thought leaders in this space, including Eric Warren from the National Hybrid Schools Project and Michael Crawford from the Vela Education Fund that supports these startup entrepreneurs. So looking forward to seeing you there as well. Thank you again.
Great. Thanks again.